Hey everyone, it's Dr. Wright, and I wanted to walk through our last case study for child psychology with you. So if you will let me share my screen. So here we are at the homepage for our course. And if we want to take a look specifically at the case study 4, we would go to assignments. And then we would go scroll down to case study 4, research proposal. What you may have noticed about this class is that it is very much the scientist practitioner focused type of course, similarly to many of our bachelor's and master's programs in psychology. And what that means is that not only are you getting experience and learning that can help you become a scientist, but you're also getting learning and understanding that would help you become a practitioner of psychology, whether it's if you choose to become a clinician or if you choose to work in a hospital. All of those things are things that we kind of try to cover in the scientist practitioner model. So if you think back about the different case studies that we've done, you'll see that some of them are more related to the science, some of them are more related to practice. This one is going to be more specifically more related to the science of being a researcher in psychology. So one of the reasons that I want us to complete this activity is because it will give you an idea of what the process of creating a research study will look like. So that if you have the opportunity to be a research assistant in your bachelor's program, or if you have to do your own master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation, then you'll have some background in what the process looks like. So we also will be using the skills that we've learned this semester in terms of finding and summarizing primary sources, as well as writing in a scientific manner for this assignment. So those are kind of the goals that I have for you for this assignment, is to get some experience writing about research, get some experience coming up with potentially your own research. We're not actually going to do the study that we are proposing. We are simply going to create a proposal for a research study with this case study, okay? So let's go through it together. As you see, I haven't put the video in yet because I'm making it right now. This one says, as a graduate student working on your PhD in child psychology, you are required to complete a research study where you gather data to support or refute your hypothesis. The ultimate goal of this study is for you to have data to either present at a conference or to publish in a journal. Your dissertation demonstrates to your committee that you are capable of creating and performing your own research, one of the last steps to becoming a professional scientist. Before you complete your dissertation, before you begin gathering data, you have to complete a research proposal. For this case study, you will complete the research proposal by creating a hypothesis, reviewing the literature about your topic, and proposing how you would go about gathering your data. You will also describe how you would review your data in your attempt to support or refute your hypothesis. We are not worried about statistics here. So if you're thinking, I haven't taken statistics or I took statistics and I don't remember it, don't worry about it, okay? The topic of your research study or proposal must be child psychology and nature because it must relate to our course. That makes sense. It can be from any age or area of the course. You will complete a provided research proposal form as professionally as possible. Use professional sources when asked to support your hypothesis with research evidence, so summaries of primary sources. Use professional language in your writing, including grammar, editing, and spelling. And your hypothesis must be a statement of expected results, not a question. Review the grading criteria below before you start. And as you work on your proposal, you'll submit your document to a writing tutor via the tutoring center on that separate assignment. And I also suggest that you do submit the instructions so that the tutor actually knows what they're looking at. If you have questions about case studies, this questions about case studies discussion board is always here for us to discuss those. Keep in mind that you are allowed to use one direct quote for the whole entire thing, and it must be 10 words or less, and it has to be obviously referenced correctly in APA style. Make sure that if you use direct quote, you're putting it in quotation marks, that whenever you paraphrase or direct quote, you're using an in-text reference. Be sure that all sources you reference in text are listed on your reference list, which is also in APA style. We don't want to be using AI type programs to review our work or make it sound more professional. So I will be kind of keeping an eye out for documents that look like they have been influenced by AI type writing. So really important parts of this assignment are right here under resources. So the form that we have to complete and submit is right here. Okay, so you're going to click this to download it. I'm just going to click this to show it to you. This is the template, and this is what you will complete yourself. Okay, so anything with a heading, so 1, 2, we are not going to be writing anything after that. You want to give your study a title, your name, obviously. What are the research questions that you're trying to answer? What is your hypothesis or hypotheses if you have more than one? What variables are you studying? And then what is the review of the current literature? What you'll notice is that most of these are pretty quick once you've figured out what you want to study. The review of the current literature should be 2 to 3 paragraphs long and include at least 2 references. And we'll see that in the rubric as well. Next, we'll go on to methodology. So what is the method that you propose to gather data to support your hypothesis? Is it a survey? Is it an online survey? Is it an experiment? Is it a laboratory experiment? What type of methodology are you going to use? And then who do you want to study as a sample? How are you going to recruit those samples or those participants? How are you going to gather the data from the participants, what we call the procedures? And then what is your analysis plan? And again, we don't need statistics here. We literally need to say, okay, I'm going to look at the average from group A, and I'm going to compare it to the average of group B. And if the average from group A is statistically different from the average of group B, then I think that that would support my hypothesis. There you go. Okay. We also want to include any possible confounding variables. Confounds are variables that we did not study that might have influenced the result of the study. And then in section 4, this is where you will list your references in APA style. Okay, so that's the form that you're going to download and you're going to fill out. Now, I've actually got one with instructions here. So if you have questions as to, well, what should go into this section, there you go. Okay, so the instructions are in red. These are the things that you should do or not do. So title page, after it, leave it blank. Create a title for your research study. Put your name here, leave blank. Type your research questions or what you would like to learn from the study here. Type your hypothesis or hypotheses here. There's some information about hypotheses and gives bad examples, a mediocre example, and a good example. And then our variables to be studied, a review of the literature, what to include, and then method proposed. So describe your method or how you go about gathering your data. Is it going to be quantitative or qualitative? What specific method will you use? And then describe your population of study and kind of answer those questions. Make sure that you're answering them in a narrative format, not in a bullet point format. So you want to answer the questions in sentences that sound good together in a paragraph, not just yes, no, 5, things like that. Sample recruitment has some prompts for you. Procedures has some prompts. Analysis plan has some prompts. Confounds has some prompts. And then list your resources here, or your references here. I also have for you an example. So I sat down and completed this myself. So my title is Preterm Infants Later Diagnosis of ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder. My research question, do children who are born before 37 weeks get diagnosed more often with ASD than the national average? My hypothesis is that US children who were preterm infants, which is 37 weeks gestation or earlier at birth, will have a higher diagnostic prevalence of autism spectrum disorder using the ADOS2 than the national percentage at the age of 7. So I have operationalized all of my variables by telling you exactly what I'm going to study. So preterm infants, those are 37 weeks before, higher diagnostic prevalence of ASD. What are my measures? I'm going to use the ADOS2 national percentage. We already know what that is, and I will discuss that here. And then exactly when I'm going to study them, which is at the age of 7. Variables to be studied, autism spectrum disorder, preterm infants, current national average, which is 2.7%. Autism Diagnosis Observation Schedule version 2 is the ADOS. So here's the review of my literature. And then here is the method proposed. Method will be a quantitative internet survey of parents. The rationale for this choice is to increase the sample size while avoiding medical records requests and forms. So we'll go on to talk about the sample. And possible confounds, many variables that are not currently being studied could influence the results. Socioeconomic status, the person who diagnosed the child and their training, the presence of sibling, and the possibility of the child having another neurological difference instead of ASD are all possible confounding variables. And then there's my reference list in APA style. Okay, so my suggestion to you is really to start off by reviewing the assignment, and then working on your research questions. So really, what do you still want to know? After we've taken this class, what do you still want to learn about? What do you still want to understand? And those are your research questions. And then you can take one of them and you can form it into a hypothesis, which is going to predict the results that you're going to find. Once you've created your hypothesis, then you want to list out the variables that you're going to be studying and to define them. If there's an assessment that you're using, such as, an attachment questionnaire or something like that, then you will want to find some research literature on that questionnaire, so that you can put that into the literature review. So once you've got these things done, then you want to think about, okay, what is the best strategy to gather this sort of data? Would it be an experiment? Would it be a survey? Now, we also want to keep in mind ethics. So one of the reasons why I couldn't just go ask doctors for their medical records and find out, who had autism and who was a 37-week or earlier baby is because I can't request medical records. So instead of doing that, I will ask the parents in the study that I propose, right? So the next step would then be to think about how am I going to do my study. You also want to be looking at the current literature relating to your variables and to your hypothesis, and reviewing the current literature here. And reading the articles may give you ideas for how to do your study. So you definitely want to keep that in mind as you're thinking about this process. Then you want to go through and tell us, okay, what methods did you choose? Is it quant? Is it qual? How are you going to do it? who are you going to study as your sample and why? So the justification for your choice. And then how are you going to recruit your participants? What's the actual procedures to gather the data? So how will you go about doing that? And then again, thinking about how will you review your data, not using statistics, obviously, but just, when you eyeball it, when you look at the data, what are you going to be looking for in terms of finding a difference or finding whether or not the data supports your hypothesis? And then some possible confounds or variables that you didn't study that might have influenced the results, and then your reference list. Okay, so if you've looked at the schedule, you know that you have a good chunk of time to work on this. The last 2 units do not have a quiz associated with them, so you really have the time to work on this assignment. And then what are you going to be graded on? It's all listed right in here, and text references, and your review of the literature, 2 or more sources. The learning outcomes, these are mostly the course level learning outcomes, and then the instructional level learning outcomes, because this is really a final end of course assessment of what have you learned. Can you bring it all together? And then here down at the bottom, you can actually see the rubric. Some of these are completed, not complete. So there's a title, there isn't a title. You put your name or you didn't put your name. Please put your name. You put a research question, you didn't put a research question. And then some of these get into more specific things. So once you have read through the instructions, once you've read through the rubric, if you still have questions, make sure that you're going to the questions discussion board. You want to download the form itself and you want to save it to your computer and start working on your own version of it. And then once you think that you're done with it, come back and review the rubric and say, okay, did I put in my title? Did I put in my author or me? Did I put my name on there? Did I put a research question? Is my hypothesis specific and testable and written as a statement? Did I summarize my variables to be studied? Did I review the current literature? Did I use in-text references in my current literature? Did I summarize at least 2 primary sources in my review of the literature? So all of these things are kind of like checkbox that you can do, okay? So if you have questions as you're working on this, as always, feel free to go to this questions about case studies discussion board, and we can get those answered for you. You can also send me a message via Canvas inbox, and we can get those questions answered for you as well. I hope you guys enjoy working on this assignment. I personally enjoyed working on the example because this is the first time you've used this assignment, so I had to sit down and create the example. So I hope that everyone at least finds it interesting, if not enjoyable.